Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. I've got some witch hazel and some Joe Pye weed here, and I'm going to do something a little bit different today than what I normally do. So I thought what I would do is take you on a journey of how I begin a composition. So typically when I do one of these quick little videos, time is of the essence, and I'm just doing a little watercolor sketch to give you some ideas and some inspiration. But today I want to do a more careful picture of a bird because yesterday I found a hermit thrush that had crashed into my window. And I picked him up and I put him in a box and I kept him warm and dark so that he wouldn't move, and he recovered and he's fine. And off he flew. But he was so beautiful, and I did get some nice photographs of him, and I'd like to do a little watercolor of the hermit thrush. And then the more I thought about it, I realized that the reason he was around the house was because I have a Joe Pye weed that has just sprung up in the rocks. Well, not recently, it's been growing there all season, but it's loaded with berries. And I had no idea how attractive this was to so many different birds. I've seen so many come and go taking these berries. I was a little bit concerned originally because I didn't want the plant to spread all through my stone wall, but it looks like the birds are doing an awesome job of cleaning up all those berries. So I got a little bit of that, and I thought it might be fun to include that in the composition. And I noticed that my witch hazel is blooming, and it just looks spectacular right now. So this time of year, the leaves are this beautiful buttery yellow, and this is the native witch hazel, so it's not very showy, but it really is pretty darn showy. And I'll give you a close-up of that in just a minute. So my thought is, how do I take these three different things, the witch hazel, the I'm sorry, I have to correct myself. I said Joe Pye weed. I didn't mean Joe Pye. This is a pokeberry, P-O-K-E. So that's the correct name of this specimen, pokeberry, and the bird, the hermit thrush. So let me turn you down so that you can see what I have here. I don't have the bird because he flew away, but I do have a photo reference that I'll be referring to on my computer. So the witch hazel has these wonderful spidery flowers, and they have a scent. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the scent of the witch hazel. A very, very good friend of mine is actually a woodsman who goes into the woods all the time and harvests witch hazel for the witch hazel company. And so he knows a lot about the witch hazel. And then here is the pokeberry. All right, so that's what the berries look like. What's left of this little sprig. All right, and the leaves are going by now. We're starting to get some frosty nights, so not all the leaves are looking very good, but you get the idea. And I think that there's enough here that I'll be able to get a pretty good rendering of what the plant looks like. So my plan is to do a couple of little studies, and this is what I ask all my students to do because I think this is just such a valuable exercise. For this, I'm using the Fluid 100 cold press watercolor paper. It's rough, not very rough, just enough of a tooth. Cold press, okay. And I'm going to use this postcard. This is one of my oil paintings from a while back. But this postcard is just the right size for me to place on the page and trace around the edges. I can use it as a template. So there's one, and then I can just put this next to it. And this is going to give me two little rectangles to do my monochromatic and my color study. So I would call these thumbnails. Okay, these are just little quick studies just to figure out how the composition's going to go. So I'm just going to pull up my bird photo here, and I see that we are live, so that's good. So my idea is, and I'm going to zoom you in a little bit for this because I think you'll be able to see better. All right, so my idea is to have the bird sort of in the foreground here. So there he is, and he's on a branch. And then in the distance, I thought I would have my witch hazel, so sort of a cloud of this beautiful yellow going off in the distance, and then a little bit closer, maybe down here. I'm going to turn my specimen the other way here so I can see it better. Maybe down here have some of this Joe Pye. Oh, I did it again. Pokeberry. Oh boy. All right, everybody, please remember it's Pokeberry, not Joe Pye. I don't know why I've got Joe Pye on my mind, which is another beautiful native plant, by the way. And I guess maybe because they share some of the same colors, but whoops. All right. So I'll try to share some of what I'm thinking here. I want the bird and the branch here. And actually, I'm going to get my kneaded eraser out because the picture of the bird that I took was while he was still recovering, so he was a little bit droopy. And normally, their tails aren't so droopy. Their tails would be a lot more upright. So I'm going to give him a better gesture here. And then the two legs. And for the sake of the video, I'm just going to do these two little studies, but I may actually do quite a few until I get it just how I want it and I have all of my problems worked out as to how I want to design the page. But as I was saying, the main thing is that I want my bird to be this center of interest. I'm going to use this branch, and here he is on my apple tree, and there is some really nice moss and some lichens growing on there because this apple is in a shady place. And then this branch kind of curves away into the distance. And I don't want to get too hung up on details here, but I do want to get some of these angles, because those angles are going to play a role in the overall design. But the main characters, as I mentioned, are the bird and these beautiful pokeberries, and they kind of have a very nice S-curve to them, so I want to capture that. And then I'm going to add just a couple of the leaves and then of course in the background, the witch hazel. All right, and so that's a kind of a, I'm just going to mass that all together into one shape so it's not all broken up. The other thing that's interesting about this witch hazel is that there are these little, I guess they're seed pods, and I have to look that up because I've never noticed them before, and they're very attractive. And so there's a few of those here and there. The other thing that's nice about the pokeberry is that the stem, in addition to the cluster of the berries, the stem also has this beautiful kind of a red-violet color to it. All right, so that's my drawing. It's a little bit further along than I intended for it to be, but I'm going to reduce that down now to some basic shapes. So my branch coming in, something like this. The bird sitting on the branch, eyeing these berries. Still not 100% happy with that, but that's why we do these studies, to get all those directions figured out. That's better. Berry cluster, leaf shape, other leaf, witch hazel in the background. Okay. So that's a little more of what I'm talking about, just these sort of basic shapes and their relative space to one another. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a single color. So this is going to be a monochromatic value study. And this first color that I'm going to be using is the paint that you will get in your very first watercolor paint box. Okay, so if I move this over a tiny bit, it's this one right here. I'm just going to use this dark brown. Okay, it's burnt umber. And I've got a little bit of blue paint on the palette, and that's okay. I'm just going to mix them together and create a nice neutral tone. And I'm going to begin my little friend here. Witch hazel. Joe Pye. Oh, Pokeberry. Oh my God. Oh, the struggle is real. Okay. Now, in the background, I'm going to include a ground plane, something like this. So this is sort of looking beyond the things in the subject, and then up here in this area I'm going to have sky, so I'm going to keep that as my lightest light. Alright, so there's my first wash. Okay, and you can see that I now have my light tones established. So here's the sky, the lightest areas in the shrubbery and the foliage. Back here I've got a kind of a tree line blending off into the sky, and then as this comes down it's going to be a little bit darker, so I can add a little more pigment there. Same on this side. But I still haven't added any darks yet. All right, and I'm just going to let that move around like so. Okay, so that's the first wash, and you can see that the blue and the brown have created this very lovely soft neutral tone. Now down here in this area I'm going to do a little color study. So while I'm waiting for that to dry a little bit, I'm going to add a little bit of color here. And I'm going to begin with my sky, and I'm just kind of taking what's ever on the palette and mixing it all around. Alright, so there's some patches of sky coming down like so. Then my witch hazel is my yellow, going off into the background. Got these leaves for the pokeberry, and they are kind of a yellowish green. And my bird is a warm, kind of a warm brownish tone, and his belly gets a little bit paler. The branch and then the distant landscape here is something like this. These are a lot of the dried up perennials. Just let that fade away. My branch has a little bit of this very beautiful kind of a blue-green lichen tone on it. And the berries are this beautiful red violet that is just gorgeous. All right, so there is a first pass at my monochromatic value study, and here's the beginning of the sort of underpainting for my colors. And just want to get that shadow under our friend here. Okay, all right, so while I was working on the beginning of my color study, it gave my monochromatic study a chance to dry. So it's still damp, but it's dry enough now that I'll be able to add some darker tones and they won't bleed so much. So I'm going to go back into my monochromatic color here. Brown with a drop of blue just to neutralize it a little bit. And I'm going to figure out now where I want my darks to be. And this time I'm adding more pigment than water. All right, so I'm just going to grab a paper towel if I can find one here. Okay, so here's a paper towel, and I am going to remove a little excess water from the brush, and that's going to allow me to get a little more drawing into my image here. While it's still damp, I can add a little bit of texture into my background foliage. So if I just sort of dot some shadow areas into that. Same on this side. Now my berry cluster. And the berries that are left on here are quite dark. The stem itself not so dark, but it has lots of little details on it, so I can indicate some of that texture without copying. Pick up some of the detail in the leaves so that they look a little more leaf-like. And then what I'd like to establish here is that the leaves on the pokeberry are darker than the leaves in the background on that beautiful, gorgeous yellow witch hazel. And then down here there's going to be some stems, a little more texture. All right, now give my bird his beak. He's got some spots. The hermit thrush has very long legs. This is a bird that spends a lot of time on the forest floor. You don't usually see these birds near the house, but you do certainly hear them, and their song is just spectacular. And then I can get much darker on the texture of this branch coming forward. Now again, it's still pretty wet, so I'm not going to be able to get a lot of detail, but that's fine because I'm not looking for detail in this little study. This is just a extremely useful tool that's going to help me to map out the design that I want to use in my much larger composition. Right now I can go back, let that set up a little bit. I'm just going to go back into my color study here. I'm not going to do too much. I'm going to wrap this up in a little while. There he is. The apple tree branch. Some of this texture here. Same over here. Now those berries they're very red, but they have a lot of violet in them, so I'm just going to mix up a strong red violet, and I'm just going to put a couple of touches here just to give me an indication of just how dark this value is. Okay, so it looks very dark right now, I know, but I just want to, it's just a kind of a note to self of how my darkest dark is going to look. And same for the tip of his beak. That's going to be another dark accent. Those pokeberry leaves have a little more green in them, but it's the end of the season, so they're starting to fade. So they're looking a little tattered at this point. And so if I add a little bit of red, that's going to cut the green. And so there's one, got another one going off like this, a little one like so. And I'm using a round brush that has a very nice point. So a brush is doing a lot of the work for me as far as the shape of the leaves go. So I can just use the shape of the brush to sort of indicate the shape of the leaves. And then I'm going to have all of this beautiful red stems here and there. All right, now this branch back here, I have to give that some attention. It needs to be darker, so I'm going to go back to my mixture here. Get the shadow under the bird. Now in the foreground, I can add another dark accent just to pull that forward. This can be a little more okay, so I think you get the idea. I think you can see some of the thoughts that I'm having about bringing my composition together. I'm going to continue working on these things, and then once I'm happy with how I'm going to proceed, I'm going to transfer my drawing to a much larger piece of watercolor paper, and get some of his spots. This is what makes the Hermit Thrush so distinctive, is this beautiful spotted chest. So we want to make sure that those are included. All right, so there are my studies. Now that this one's dry, I can go back and I can add some darker bits. Some of these dried up brown leaves. It's going to help to pull it all together. Over here there might be some things in the foreground that'll help that. And then ultimately this area is going to have all sorts of branches which I'll just do in the last couple of minutes of the painting, just to give the effect of the trees, the witch hazel, etc., etc. Okay, so when you get, if you are a member of the Watercolor Card Club or the Watercolor Paintbox, we're making the transition over to the new subscription box. Okay, so that is a monthly subscription where you're going to get a fresh tube of paint each month, and I'm going to be presenting a series of videos and tutorial so that you can follow along step by step and learn how to do some of these things that I share with you. And it's not too late, so please subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage for more information. You can also go to the website at Dandelion Cottage Design and sign on to Notes there if you'd like, and you'll have a lot more information about how you can learn more about the online classes, the watercolor paint box, and all the things that are going on around here at Dandelion Cottage. This is a pretty exciting time of year as the animals and the birds are getting ready. They're preparing for winter. The geese are starting to fly overhead on their way south, and we've got a lot of very busy squirrels and chipmunks topping off their stashes. So it's a very busy and fun time, and I'll be sharing some of those things in future videos with you. So stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.